Hello. In this C++ programming video, I will be covering nested if statements. These are if statements placed inside other if blocks, allowing your program to make more detailed decisions step by step. So what are nested if statements? Well, a nested if statement is simply one if block inside another. Think of it as a decision inside the decision. As you can see on the screen here is a simple syntax example. So if the first condition is true, it goes inside the first if block, and then there's another if statement seeing if condition 2 is true. The stuff inside condition 2 runs only if both conditions are true. And then below that, this code only runs. This runs only if condition 1 is true. So let us look at a simple example. So as we can see here, we are checking two conditions. If the user enters 50 or more, they pass. So that's the condition 1. So if the user passes, no matter what happens in the second if statement, this line of code on line 9 prints out. But inside the first if statement is condition 2. So if the user passes and they get over 90, the system congratulates them. So the code on line 12 only happens if they pass and get an A. So let us compile this. And run it. So the test score, let's start with a 40. So nothing happens. If they get a 60, the system says that they passed the test. Finally, if let's say they get 95, they pass the test and the system congratulates the user. So our next example is going to be another real-world style use case. So here we are involving both age and citizenship check. So first we're defining age and citizen. Then we are asking the user to enter their age, and then we are asking the user to denote whether they're a citizen or not. And then down here, first we're checking to see if the person is over 18. And then we are checking to see if they're a citizen. If they're not over 18, it doesn't matter if they're a citizen or not, they can't vote. You could do this in the opposite order. You could first check to see if they are a citizen and then see if they're over 18, but it doesn't really matter. Again, this is where system design comes into play. But if they are over 18, then we're checking to see if the user is a citizen. If that's the case, they're eligible. If not, it says that you must be a citizen to vote. So let's make a new terminal here and compile the program. And let's run it. So first, let's say we are only 8 years old. And then we're asking if you're a citizen. Let's say we are. It says you must be at least 18 to vote because that first check fails. Next, let us enter an age of 8 and say that we are not a citizen. Now it says you must be. It still says you must at least be 18 to vote because first that first check fails. Next, let's say we are above 18 and say we are a citizen. It says you're eligible to vote. And then finally, if we say we are voting age but not a citizen, Then the second check comes in and says you must be a citizen to vote. So some formatting tips. Always use braces with nested ifs, even if optional for clarity. Always indent properly to make your logic readable. That's why you should always use IDE such as Visual Studio Code. And then finally, avoid nesting too deeply. If it gets hard to read, consider combining conditions with and or not. So when do we use nested if versus else if? Well, it's pretty simple. Use nested ifs when you want a secondary condition to be checked only if the first one is true. Just like our voting example, right? If you're not at least 18, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter for the system to check if you're a citizen or not because you can't vote. But you use else if when you are checking alternative conditions that are not related. So our example here is if you're logged in and you're an admin. If you're logged in, it doesn't matter if you're an admin or not. But here with grades, getting an A is completely different from getting a B, from a C, and so on. So as a practice challenge, write a program that asks the user for their age and driving test result. P for pass or F for fail. If the user is 18 or older and they pass the test, print that they can now drive. Otherwise, print the correct restriction. In this episode, you learned what nested if statements are, how to use them in real programs, the difference between nested if and else if, and common use cases and formatting tips. If you found this tutorial helpful, do not forget to like, subscribe, turn on notifications, and leave a comment. In the next episode, we will cover if-else statements in depth and how they work with what you just learned. If you reach out if you have any questions. Otherwise, thank you for watching and have a great day.